Many global languages rely on varying word endings to signal exactly who is performing an action and who is receiving it. English operates differently. It drops those word endings and instead relies on a strict physical sequence of slots to assign grammatical roles. Take a basic set of inputs. Sarah really enjoys a hot dog. If we take those exact same words and physically swap their positions, we get a hot dog really enjoys Sarah. The words haven't changed form, but the reality of the sentence has completely reversed. This sequence, subject followed by verb followed by object, is known as SVO. It is the core architectural baseline of the English language. English syntax operates as a modular engine. Physical placement directly dictates meaning. That SVO baseline is highly rigid, but it can shift. Speakers alter this order when they need to issue a distinct structural command. To form a question, the structure requires an interrogative inversion. An auxiliary verb, a helping verb like is or has, must detach from the main block and slide entirely outside the SVO sequence, landing immediately in front of the subject. We see this mechanic clearly in political reporting. A statement like, "The Prime Minister is discussing the debt," becomes a question by pulling the auxiliary forward. Is the Prime Minister discussing the issue of debt with the Cabinet? We make similar structural inversions for stylistic reasons. When we place negative adverbs like never or seldom at the very beginning of a sentence to emphasize them, we force the auxiliary verb to jump ahead of the subject, as in the famous phrase, "Never in the field of human conflict was so much owed by so many to so few." These deviations are precise systemic signals of a speaker's intent. Once the baseline is established, the internal mechanics of the clause are dictated by the main verb. This concept is called verb valency. The verb acts as a central processor, strictly determining which grammatical blocks are allowed to follow it. Intransitive verbs operate as physically closed processors. Verbs like shatter resolve action on their own. To add detail, attach a prepositional phrase, "The cup shattered into shards." Conversely, transitive verbs are open processors. They mandate a direct object to receive their action. Modern English frequently bends these rules to create highly specific professional jargon. Intransitive verbs are often forced into transitive slots, allowing business leaders to say they need to grow the business. The choice of verb determines the specific structural requirements for the remainder of the sentence. Certain high-capacity transitive verbs, words like give, bring, or show, require even more bandwidth. They demand two distinct object slots to function properly. This creates a structural hierarchy. The sentence must accommodate both a direct object, the actual item being acted upon, and an indirect object, the recipient of that item. The default sequence places the indirect object after the verb, then the direct object. The judges gave the enormous marrow first prize. Reversing this order requires a preposition, usually to or for, to rebalance the sentence. The judges gave first prize to the enormous marrow. Speakers typically opt for this reversed prepositional pattern when they want to intentionally place new or critical information at the absolute end of the sentence to give it maximum weight. We can shift the weight of the sentence, but only by introducing new grammatical components to maintain the semantic logic. SVO structure also contains a critical trap. It is easy to assume that whatever follows a verb is its object, but that is not always the case. Certain verbs introduce a complement. Unlike an object, which acts as a target receiving an action, a complement is a structural loop. It points backward to identify, describe, or give information about an element that preceded it. This happens primarily with verbs of being, like become, appear, or seem. The verb acts as an equal sign, linking the subject to a new identifying noun phrase. In the sentence, George Carey has become the new Archbishop of Canterbury, Archbishop of Canterbury is a complement, identifying the subject rather than receiving action. This descriptive loop can also target the object of a verb. We use this frequently with verbs of naming or calling, like the president decided to call his new dog Buddy. Critical analysis relies heavily on this complement pattern. Consider how critics evaluate film. Many critics call Kevin Costner's The Postman his worst movie yet. The structure mandates that the direct object, the postman, sits immediately before the complement, worst movie, which defines it. We see this pattern in advertising idioms. A brand claims its aftershave will send women wild. Women is the object, and wild is the complement. Complements act as descriptive mirrors within the sentence architecture, entirely distinct from the transactional nature of direct objects. When we zoom out from the internal mechanics of a single clause, we reach the macro architecture of English, networking multiple independent clauses together to build complex data structures. The first system of network building is coordination. Coordination links clauses of equal grammatical value, meaning both can stand completely on their own as separate sentences. They are joined horizontally by simple conjunctions, and, but, or. Because these coordinate clauses carry equal structural weight, they can frequently swap positions without breaking the logic. In sports reporting, you might hear that at the French Open, Hewitt both proved his return to form and won the only Grand Slam title to have evaded him. You could reverse the order of those two achievements seamlessly. Coordination builds decentralized networks where grammatical weight is distributed evenly. The second networking structure is subordination. This creates a vertical hierarchy, where a dependent clause relies entirely on a main clause to make sense. This hierarchy introduces a major conflict in complex syntax, the difference between chronological reality and structural sequence. Look at this chronological baseline. The flowers were delivered just after she left. There is immediate friction here. The physical syntax forces the flowers were delivered into the first position, but chronological reality dictates that her leaving was actually the first event. The subordinating conjunction acts as an unbreakable anchor, locking the true sequence into place. We can physically front the subordinate clause. Just after she left, the flowers were delivered. The physical positions swap entirely, but the underlying timeline markers remain exactly the same. The grammatical anchor allows physical word order to invert without ever compromising the underlying timeline. This exact mechanic allows us to layer complex historical logic into a single sentence. Although the Aztecs were rich and powerful, the Spanish conquistadors overpowered them. The conjunction although allows massive contextual contrast to be structurally subordinated to the primary event of the defeat. English syntax operates as a dual-layered engine. The verbs strictly police the internal slots of every single clause, while the conjunctions engineer the macro reality of time and logic across the entire sentence.